Before Brazil received its name, before any vessel reached these coasts, this territory was already alive with voices. Many voices traveled on the wind through jungles, carried by oars slicing through river currents. These were the earliest stories recorded not with pen and paper, but through generations of people. And blood holds memory. It holds memory of cold and heat, starvation and survival. It holds memory of journeys over frozen oceans, ships crossing the Atlantic, and shackles rattling in shadowed cargo spaces. Every group that arrived added something, a beat to the songs, a taste to the dishes, a thread in the genetic code. This isn't simply a nation's history. This is a timeline stretching more than 15,000 years, recorded one cell at a time. Brazil's earliest people entered this story long before Portugal was even born. They traveled from Siberia during the final ice age, bringing paternal lineages such as QM3, which scientists have found in 12,600-year-old remains from Montana. Their maternal lines, A2, B2, C1, D1, originated in Ice Age shelters of East Asia, then migrated across the Bering Land Bridge into the Americas. They possessed copper to light brown skin, straight black hair, and deep brown eyes, features guided by genes like OCA2 and MC1R, adapted for equatorial sunlight. They understood rivers like pathways, navigated forests without written guides. And when Portuguese men showed up centuries afterward, indigenous women gave birth to Brazil's first mixed-generation children. Their mitochondrial DNA continues to pulse in most Brazilians today, an ancient rhythm from the continent's beginning. In 1500, sails emerged on the horizon. Along with them came invisible destroyers, smallpox, measles, and influenza. Unseen but unstoppable, they spread faster than the ships, arriving at villages long before any European was witnessed. Not long after came the seizure of territory, and with it, the gradual disappearance of ways shaped across thousands of years. The Portuguese also brought a complex history. The earliest layer came from Western hunter-gatherers, Ice Age survivors with paternal haplogroups like I2 and maternal lines such as U5 and U4. Dark-skinned, blue-eyed, connected to forest and river. Then arrived the Anatolian farmers. Around 9,000 years ago, people from what is now Turkey and the Fertile Crescent brought wheat, barley, pottery, and livestock into Europe. They introduced G2A, maternal lines like T2, K1, and N1A, lighter skin, and the first settlements. Last came the Eurasian steppe herders 5,000 years ago. They brought haplogroup R1b, maternal lines like H6 and W, along with horses, wheels, and the early Indo-European language, ancestor of Latin and later Portuguese. Their customs merged through Rome into Christianity, and their genes distributed lighter skin throughout Europe. By the age of exploration, the Portuguese inherited all three ancestries, but their paternal lines were dominated by R1b's most widespread lineage, M269. Olive to fair skin, dark hair, and brown or hazel eyes were most typical. Few had enough wealth. Many wed indigenous women, transferring bloodlines, the Catholic faith, and the Portuguese language. From the windswept steppe to Lisbon and onto the vibrant streets of Brazil, the Portuguese strand in blood, in language, and in faith holds the memory of a migration, one built by fresh starts, but also by lives and traditions abandoned. Yet Brazil's story wasn't written by European hands alone. From across the Atlantic came another wave, not of adventurers, but of millions who were violently removed from their homelands. Starting in the 16th century, Portuguese traders transported men, women, and children from West and Central Africa to labor in Brazil's growing sugar plantations, gold mines, and later coffee estates. The colony's enormous territory, tropical climate, and thriving export economy made Brazil the largest destination for Africans in the Americas. Between the 1500s and 1800s, over 4 million people were removed from regions such as Angola, the Congo, and Benin. They survived long crossings over the ocean under brutal conditions, journeys where many would never see the shore. They brought E1B1AM2, a paternal lineage over 20,000 years old, common in West Africa. Their maternal lines L1, L2, L3 are among the oldest on Earth, some over 100,000 years in age, first carried by early Homo sapiens. Their skin was deep brown to black, their hair tightly curled, their eyes warm brown, each an adaptation to the tropical sun. They introduced rhythms that became samba, movements that became capoeira, and deities that merged into candomblé. In parts of Brazil today, African ancestry represents more than half of the genetic makeup, a foundation as lasting as the land itself. By the late 1800s, ships from the Mediterranean brought Lebanese and Syrian migrants. Many brought J1, born in the deserts of Arabia, and J2, rooted in the ancient Fertile Crescent. Maternal lines like U3 and K had moved across the Mediterranean for thousands of years. They often had olive skin, dark hair, and hazel or brown eyes. Coming as merchants and shopkeepers, they transformed Brazil's cities, blending Middle Eastern flavors and customs into the urban landscape. Their numbers were modest, but their genetic and cultural mark remains, seen in notable Lebanese Brazilians such as Michel Temer, former president of Brazil, Fernando Haddad, politician and former mayor of São Paulo, Tony Kanaan, Indy 500 champion, Adib Jatin, pioneering heart surgeon, and artists like Nanda Costa and singer Fafá. Between 1870 and 1920, over 1 million Italians crossed the Atlantic. Most originated from the northern provinces, Veneto, Lombardy, Piedmont, bringing R1BU152, the paternal signature of Italic tribes and Roman legions, and G2A, a Neolithic farmer lineage from Anatolia. Maternal lines H and K connected them to the wider Mediterranean. They had fair to olive skin, wavy brown hair, hazel or green eyes. In southern Brazil, they established vineyards, constructed factories, and filled the air with the smell of bread and wine. Genetically, they raised the frequency of lighter eyes and hair in the south, a visible legacy even today. From the 1820s onward, German settlers came in waves. They brought R1BU106, the paternal signature of ancient Germanic tribes, and I1, born in Ice Age Scandinavia. Maternal lines like T2 and U came from Northern Europe's glacial refugees. With fair skin, blonde to light brown hair, and blue or gray eyes, they constructed timber towns like Blumenau and Joinville. Oktoberfest celebrations, German dialects, and Lutheran churches still echo their presence. In the genetics of the South, their Northern European heritage remains clear. In 1908, the first Japanese migrants arrived on Brazilian soil. Their paternal lineage, OM175, had spread through East Asia for 35,000 years. Maternal lines like D4 and M7 trace back to ancient fishing communities of coastal China and Japan, with fair to light brown skin, straight black hair, and dark brown eyes. They settled mainly in São Paulo. They changed agriculture, introduced martial arts, and added sushi and tempura to Brazilian tables. Today, Brazil is home to the largest Japanese community outside Japan. Their DNA is part of the nation's Far Eastern chapter. Polish, Swiss, Ukrainian, and Dutch migrants contributed smaller but distinct genetic notes. Some brought R1A, the paternal marker of Indo-European migrations. Others introduced I2 from the Balkans or G2A from the first Anatolian farmers. Their appearances varied widely: pale to medium skin, light or dark hair, blue, green, or brown eyes. They left traces in farming traditions, surnames, and religious customs scattered across Brazil's map. Today, Brazil's DNA tells a story written in numbers. On average, about 60% European, 25% African, and 15% indigenous. But the reality is deeper because every region holds its own balance. In the north along the Amazon, indigenous ancestry is strongest, 30 to 40%, woven with Portuguese and African lines. In the northeast, from Bahia to Pernambuco, African roots run deep. Here they reach 40 to 50%, and in Bahia sometimes more than 60%. In the southeast, Rio, São Paulo, Minas Gerais, the story shifts. European ancestry rises to 60 or even 70%, joined by African at 20 to 30%, and indigenous at around 10 to 15%. In the south, the legacy of Italian and German settlers is clear. European ancestry often stands at 70 to 80%, with smaller African and indigenous traces. And in the center-west, the frontier lands are a true blend. About 50 to 60% European, 25 to 30% African, and 15 to 20% indigenous. Every state, every city, every family, a different blend of the same grand symphony. A living mosaic of ancestry recorded not on maps, but in blood and memory. From the Amazon to Sao Paulo, from Africa to Europe to Asia, Brazil's DNA is a living record of human movement. It speaks of ice crossings and ocean journeys, of hopes brought across seas, of endurance and mixing. And in every Brazilian today, there exists a map, not sketched on paper, but coded in cells holding the memory of ancestors from every corner of the earth who united to build something completely new. If this genetic journey through Brazil moved you, hit that like button, subscribe, and spread it with others. More tales of ancestry and history are coming, and side by side, we'll continue revealing the past hidden inside every one of us.